I have a special guest here with me today, Lindz McLeod, and we're going to tell you what we know about pitching. Right, so we'll get straight to it. I'll invite Lindz to tell you a bit about herself. Lindz, tell us all about you.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me on. I'm Lindz McLeod. I'm a queer working class writer. I am a full member of the SFWA. I'm represented by Laura Zatz at Headwater. My prose has been published by Catapult, Flash Fiction Online, Pseudopod, many more. I also do poetry and some audio dramas and some other things. I'm a jack of all trades. And I also write in a gamut of genres, from literary to very, very, very weird. And that is what I do.
Lynn's had some great pieces, and if you go on her website, which I will link to down below, you will not believe just the catalogue of places she's been published. It's truly impressive. And Lynn's, I must say, you actually inspired me to try my hand at short fiction as well.
Excellent. I always encourage people to do that. I think it's a great thing to have in your bio, but it's also just a great thing to try out because it makes the other work, the long form work, just that little bit tighter, I always feel.
Yeah, I think so. Now, a couple of things I think we should mention up front before we get to pitching. We both found our agents at pitch contests. I found my agent at a contest called Pit Dark. I found Jared there. How did you meet your agents?
So Laura liked my pitch during, I believe it was Pit Mad. I had quite a few agents, like a few different pitches during different pitch events, but Laura's manuscript wish list really stood out for me. And I also stalked her a little bit on Twitter, and she seemed like she was using her voice for good, which was something that was really, really crucial to me, especially during 2020 for various reasons.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we should say we know each other kind of from the community. When I was querying, Lynn's helped me with my query letter. And actually, I think I even ended up querying Laura at one stage. I think she actually liked one of my pitches and it didn't work out. But I feel like we've crossed paths a few times. So it's a real pleasure to have you on. Now, I think most people who are watching this video are going to be familiar with what pitch contests are. I keep saying pit, but pitch contests. But should we just get to kind of tips and tricks and advice? And how do you make a pitch go big? Do you think what are the key ingredients to a good pitch?
So, I mean, in my opinion, one of the things that is the most crucial and the one that doesn't get talked about enough, because we can go back and we can talk about the main part, but for me, the most important thing that doesn't get talked about is the comps. So the books that you're using as comparisons. So the problem is that if you use really big names in your genre, regardless of what that genre is, whether it's like Sally Rooney for literary or like N.K. Jemisin for fantasy, you are competing against all of the other people who are also using those big names. And you kind of risk an agent going, oh, okay, well, I've seen that a million times. So for me, the real trick with comps is to put two quite unexpected books together.
Yeah.
So mine was Beauty and the Beast meets The Remains of the Day, which got a lot of interest because that is a really weird combination. And a lot of agents had said, actually that it was that really got my interest because we hadn't seen that before and we were really intrigued to see what that would look like in the manuscript itself. So for me, if you're thinking about, obviously you want to use books that are relevant and contemporary as well. They always say kind of use something that's been published within the last couple of years, but try to use something that's a little bit different from what you think other people will be doing. Try to stand out that little bit more.
Yeah, I will add to that. I think especially in your query letter, it definitely needs to be recent. But in pitch contests, you can get away with a bit going a bit wider, like you said, Beauty and the Beast, and I used Good Omens and Hitchhiker's Guide, which are very well known.
And which were actually perfect for yours as well.
Worked for mine, but were way dated and actually mega selling. But it explained the book well, and I think that the combination of the two was interesting. Like, people wanted to see, well, how would that work?
Yeah.
And same with yours. I think people were intrigued to see, well, what's that going to look like? And quite often comps are enough to get people interested. How do you feel about contest prep? Because one of the things that really upped my game when I started, I managed to get likes, but I didn't really do any kind of prepping for the contest in terms of making lists, retweet lists with other authors. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I mean, Twitter is sometimes a terrible place, but it can be a really useful tool in terms of community. As a writer, you kind of need community, and it's also a helpful thing to have, not just in this kind of small picture in terms of pitches and pitch meetings and stuff, but when you're thinking about the bigger picture, is you then might have other people responding, saying that they really like your idea, and you sort of start to build up a little community where, they might be able to give you some useful information later on as well. I think it's a good idea to know what you're doing beforehand, and maybe to schedule some tweets in case in case some things happen during your day and you can't necessarily do everything on time, because you're only allowed like a certain amount. And also to kind of mix up, not to do the same tweet every hour, but to kind of have like 3 or 4 different ones that are just focusing on like a slightly different angle of the manuscript. I think that's a good idea, because any agent who likes any one of your tweet might well go back through your timeline and have a little bit of a look just to get some more information. So it's always good to have something else that, have 2 tweets that are kind of different to pull them in.
The one Jared liked of mine was actually a list pitch, and by a list pitch I mean it was just like all the characters in my story with a little line about them and kind of a hook line at the end. So it wasn't a traditional pitch at all. And at the time, I didn't really like that style of pitch, but I thought I'm just going to use it to kind of break up doing the same thing all the time. And it worked out for me. So I'm glad I did. But yeah, I agree. You should experiment and try to do a few different things. Have you seen any kind of unusual styles of pitches other than the sort of classic, main character conflict stakes kind of formula? Or do you think most people stick to that?
I think most people have stuck to that. It is difficult to do something that different in such a small space. You could potentially, I know that the algorithm in Twitter works in certain ways, so you could always kind of boost your pitch with like an accompanying picture that like sets the mood, because sometimes people do kind of mood boards and stuff. So that might be something interesting if you're adding a visual aspect to it as well. But yeah, like I'm a fan of lists. I use lists in my prose as well. So I'm a fan of doing that. So it's interesting because I hadn't really thought about it. It's almost like a hermit crab pitch, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think it works especially well for kind of rom-coms, sort of lighter genres. It might work well for, maybe not epic fantasy. You were talking about the algorithm, and I think a really good thing you can do to boost your pitch on the day, and it's just nice in general, is to interact with people, kind of comment on their pitches, and hopefully they'll come and check yours out and give you some comments. And then you can like the comments and comment back, and that's all. It's nice because you're interacting, but kind of a more Machiavellian motive is that you are getting boosted in the algorithm too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a marketing exercise. You're marketing yourself. You are, or you could be and should be, always studying other people to see what are other people doing. What can I learn from them? I frequently am in events, or I'm in writing groups, or I'm in prompt things, and I'm always looking to see what other people are doing and what can I learn from that and how can I apply it to my own work. So if you are your eye is caught by a tweet, by all means, like, go and interact with it, but also be thinking, like, what was it about this tweet that got my attention, and is there anything I can use to kind of tweak my own? Like, what did they do that I liked? Is mine catching attention in the same way? And if not, like, how can I work that in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should always check out kind of the top tweets on the day of a pit mad, or whatever. The pit mad's now defunct, but whatever the pitch contest is you're entering, because you'll almost certainly learn something. I don't know if you did this, but I always saved a few characters for layout just so I could space things out nicely, because I thought that gave it a better visual.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, it can look a bit much if it's just kind of all clumped together. Because when you're thinking about a query letter, you don't write a query letter in one massive paragraph. You split it into easily manageable chunks, and it's kind of natural for our eye to want to see small segments rather than just a block of something.
Oh yeah, and if you have a really nice hook line or something like that, having that little space between the main block of text and the hook line can be so impactful and so effective. I think people underestimate that because they've got such a short space to work in. They worry about fitting everything in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And also this kind of harks back to what I was saying before of obviously the comps being crucial, the spacing, the formatting of the tweet. But also, what is your main thrust? And you really want to get that across as quickly and concisely as possible. So when you first asked me on to do this interview, I was thinking about, what exactly is it that hooks you in a tweet? And I'm always thinking about hooks because it's something that I get a reasonable amount of praise for in my prose. And I've just done an event where we talked about the music of Queen. Cool. They really know how to write a hook. The first two lines of any song, you know where you are, you know who the characters are, you know what the tone is, which is, an excellent way of looking at things. So now when I look at pitches, I'm thinking okay, you can tell me what the themes are, but I want to be shown. You can say, oh, this book is about family and sacrifices and music, but if you actually tell me that character is an 11-year-old girl called Rosie Lee who has to play a violin contest against several rounds of devils to win back her father's soul, I'm oh, well, I'm much more interested in that. I want to read that. Yeah. But if you're just oh, it's about family and sacrifice, and I'm okay, well, I don't know what that means to you. What does it mean to you? Who's your character? And what stakes are they against? What are their obstacles? What are their goals? What is keeping them? And a character should, in my opinion, they should always be kept from something. There should always be an obstacle. And I say this in prose, whenever I have clients or workshop participants asking me, well, what do I do? I'm well, what does your character want? Okay, take it away from them. I am a very cruel person. I will just take it away. How are they going to react with that? What are they going to do? And it's the same thing in the pitch. What do they want? They can't have it. So what is happening there?
I completely agree with that. My favorite bit of writing advice I got when I was starting out doing the first novel was, okay, figure out what your character's worst fear is, the absolute worst thing they can imagine that should happen to them. Yeah. And I think it's the flaws in a character that make people fall in love with them. I really do. I don't think I read sometimes kind of people, beta reading and stuff, people are working on things and they've made the character awesome. They can do all this exciting stuff, but it's just not quite landing with me because I want to know where's the flaw? Where's the underlying humanity I can kind of connect with? Where's the longing?
Oh, I completely agree. I don't really get a lot of interest myself in reading about this kind of Jason Bourne. You might want to edit that out.
That's okay.
This kind of Jason Bourne character who is incredible and can do all the things, or as kind of a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu, I guess in that case. But I'm really interested in people who are quite fundamentally flawed in some way, and often they are self-sabotaging as well. Like, to me, that's really interesting, because that is real life. People don't always work towards their goals with their own best interests in mind, and it's the same thing in dialogue as well. So people are always kind of talking past each other.
Absolutely. But bringing that back to pitching, I think one thing that people could do that they often don't is just put in a word, an adjective to describe their character in the pitch, just to give us some idea. A word like stoic or excitable can really change what we have in our minds when we read a pitch.
Oh yeah, of course. If you're thinking about 11-year-old Rosie Lee, who's about to play the violin, if you describe her as Wallflower Rosie Lee,
yes,
I'm like, oh no, that's even harder for her. Wow, how is she gonna get the confidence to play violin against these devils? I'm really sold on this book. I'm sold on this character.
Do you know what? That made it so much better for me. I think one of us should write this one.
We could write it together.
Yeah, write it together. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm looking at the time, and I said we'd try and keep it to 10 minutes, but I knew we'd go over because we have a lot to say about pitching. I'll tell you what I'll say, Linz, if you're up for it, because there's a new channel, so we don't get a lot of views at the moment. But if anyone has a question, pop it in the comments, and, Linz or I, or both of us will try and answer for you.
Absolutely.
How's that? Yeah.
I am always open to being asked questions by writers. I'm on Twitter all day, every day. You can ask me whatever you like.
So I should mention that Linz, apart from being amazing at writing, and you really should go check out her website, she also does editorial work, and she is very, very good. She also has started doing events. Am I right?
Yes. I've been doing a variety of events and courses, which you can find on my website.
And I can tell the viewers from experience, because I've had feedback from Lynn, she is very kind, not brutal at all in any way.
No, I'm kind. I'm just a delicate little lamb, just coming in and just gently nuzzling your query where it needs to be. Yeah. I promise.
Okay, well that's awesome. So I will link to your website down below, and thank you so much for coming on, Linz. It's been such a pleasure. Hopefully we can do something like this again, or write a novel together. Who knows?
I'm going to hold you to that, and thank you very much for having me on this.
Yeah, you say that now, but I have a feeling your writing speed and my writing speed. Okay, well, thank you to everyone who watched. Please do like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the YouTube things. It will really help us grow the channel, and hopefully I can get more guests on to talk about this kind of thing. If you do have any questions, leave them in the comments and we will try and answer them for you.